Today on Callahan's Garage, we got the Beetle finished, and we're in Wildwood, New Jersey. Alright folks, welcome back to Callahan's Garage. My name's Callahan, and if you're new to the channel, we are working on our 1962 Beetle again today. So in previous videos, we took our transaxle out, we got it back in. We did the same thing to our engine, took it out and got it back in. We did a bunch of work to both of them, and today we're going to start working on our suspensions. So we're slamming out the whole car. We got a narrowed adjustable beam, we got drop spindles, we got adjustable spring plates, we got the whole setup to get this thing sitting right. So we got all of our suspension from the one and only Autowerks Suspension. Sam is absolutely one of my homeboys. He's been hooking me up with suspension stuff for years for both personal projects and customers. As far as air-cooled suspension stuff goes, in my book, Sam is as good as it gets. All brand new, made from scratch stuff. We got a 4-inch narrowed beam here with shock towers. We got the skid plate. He also hooked us up with our drop spindles. All new hardware for everything. So I'm going to put his info in the description and make sure you hit him up for all of your air-cooled suspension needs. So let's get right into it. We still have our rear end torn down from where we took the transaxle out. None of that's hooked back up yet, so we got our adjustable spring plates. Let's go put them into the car. Alright, so we're getting our rear end back together. I've got my adjustable spring plates from Sam installed on this side. I'm getting my axle hooked back up. I got my new shock in. I'm about to torque down the drum. Then we can put on our wheel studs, our wheel spacer, and get our wheels bolted back up in here. I got to do all the same thing to the other side still, but hopefully we'll get the rear end of the car sitting down here in a few minutes. Alright, so we finished up with our rear end yesterday afternoon, and this morning we're going to get out here and disassemble the front end. So before we do that, we're going to pull the gas tank out. We have to get the gas tank out to get to the top bolts on our beam anyway, and it's so much easier to disassemble your tie rods and everything with the gas tank already out of the way. So that's always your first step when you start to remove your front end. Get that fuel tank right out of the way. So there we go. We got both of our tie rods out. I'm just going to throw these out. We are not going to reuse these. Anytime you install a narrowed front end, you're going to have to also have adequately narrowed tie rod ends. And when you buy a front end from Sam, he will supply you with brand new tie rods ends if you want them, with brand new tubing for the tie rods, rather than having to cut these and narrow these and that's just not the best way to do it. So like I said, we got brand new ones, we're gonna toss these out. Okay, so we've got most everything disconnected. The only thing we have left are the physical bolts that hold the beam to the body and to the tunnel. So we've got 4 big bolts on the front, 2 bolts on the top. But before we do that, I'm gonna reposition my jack stands. Currently they're under the beam, so we need to move them back so that we can get the beam out of the car. And it is helpful to have a second person to kind of hold this thing and steady it as you lower it down. But it's just me here today, so we're just going to do it live. Here we go. There we go. Beautiful. Okay, so we got our old beam out. We're gonna do some cleaning up on it. We're gonna sweep up and vacuum out the mess up there. We got some fresh paint drying on our new beam, and then we're gonna throw the old beam up here on the table. We need to get the torsion arms and the steering box and some stuff off of this to reuse. So we'll get to it. All right, well, we got our old beam fully disassembled. We got our new beam just about ready to go into the car. I just put the grease fittings in here. So I think I'm about done with the cleaning and the grime today. We're gonna go ahead and throw this up under the car, and then I think I'm gonna call it a day. We've got fresh paint on our torsion arms over there drying. We got our drop spindles and everything else ready to go in, so tomorrow we'll be able to come out here and jam this whole thing together. Okay, so we got our beam installed last night and we're almost ready to start dressing it back up. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to disassemble my brakes. And you may or may not need to do this for your particular project. We have new drop spindles, so we don't need to use our old spindles. But we are going to be running the original drum brakes on the front of this car for the time being. So we need to get the backing plates and the drums off of here. The rest of this we're not going to use. We got all new brake guts and everything. So I'm going to tear these apart, and then keep in mind, if you're having drop spindles built, you will need the carriers off of your original spindles. So hang on to these so that you can send them off as cores or whatever you need to do. I don't recommend rebuilding your kingpins unless you've done it before. It's kind of a tricky job. You need a couple of specific things to do it. But a lot of providers like Sam offer fully built kingpin spindles ready to go. So that's what I've got here. If you have a later model ball joint car, you don't have to fool with this at all. You can just bolt your new spindle straight up to your torsion arms. Okay, so we got our spindles and our brakes all broken down. I like to just keep a set of these on hand. That way, when I order my new drop spindles, I already have some I can go ahead and send out. So I'm gonna throw these on the shelf. We'll get our backing plates and our drums all cleaned up. We've got to reuse some of this hardware, so we'll get it cleaned up as well. So I think now we're ready to start putting our beam back together. Okay, so we got our new bearings and races installed into our hubs. We got them packed with grease. We got them loaded up, all ready to go. New wheel seals in the back of them. So we're ready to go put these on the spindles. Doing wheel bearings is pretty straightforward. If you've never done it before, just go ahead and get yourself a nice little bearing packer that makes it a million times easier. A nice little driver set for getting your races in makes it a million times easier. And then make sure you're using a good quality grease. I really like this Lucas green grease. It's really heavy duty, works really well on everything. I run it on my big truck and everything, and it holds up a really long time. But otherwise, just make sure you get enough grease packed into your hub, and then make sure your bearings are fully packed. One of the biggest mistakes people make with this is not loading the hub up with grease. And you can see how much grease I was grabbing and gobbing down into this thing. So load your hubs up and then make sure you pack your bearings effectively. Okay, so you can see we got all our brake stuff finished up. We got our new flex lines, all new hard lines up here. We got a new hard line running to the back, new master cylinder, new brake light switch. We got our reservoir hooked up, and you can see we had to improvise a little bit, add a little piece of hose because we have the newer style inlet on our master cylinder. But the brakes are all wrapped up now. I've got them fully adjusted, so we just need to bleed the brakes. Then we can throw our gas tank back in here, and we're almost ready to set this thing back down on the ground. So as you can see, we're almost wrapped up with the car now. We got everything buffed out. We got our new trim and our new running boards on. So we got kind of held up waiting on our second new master cylinder. So like I said, we're about to bleed the brakes out. Then we can get our suspension fully adjusted and finally get this thing set on the ground. All right, well, there we go. We got this thing sitting down on the ground. We got our front end adjusted. We got our rear spring plates adjusted. Everything set up exactly where we want it. I just finished pulling a tape measure on our front end. We got a quick little alignment done, so the car should drive nicely now. We've got a nice lowered ride height, but we're not so low that we're not going to be able to get over speed bumps and typical obstacles. The car should still ride really well, but we've got a really nice stance. So I think we're pretty much wrapped up with this thing. We're ready to take it for a test drive. All right, well, test driving the Beetle. Everything's working flawlessly. Car's running great. About as much power as we can expect out of a 40 horse, but running strong, doing great, no issues. Suspension, brakes, everything's working perfectly. But we're ready to load up, and we're gonna be headed out to Roots Classic with the Beetle here soon. Alrighty, well, we got the Beetle unloaded and back into the shop. We got back from Roots Classic 3 late last night. It's a big, awesome weekend all the way up in Wildwood, New Jersey. So it's just Volkswagens, friends, events all weekend long. It's a really great event. So if you haven't been yet, I would highly recommend you check out their website and add it to your calendar for next year. I don't really usually shoot content and video and stuff while we're at events like that. You know, there's too many friends, there's too many people to see, there's too much hanging out to do, and I like to just be there and enjoy it in the moment. I did meet a handful of subscribers while we were up there, so that was super cool. If you ever see me out at a show or event or anything, you know, feel free to come up and say hello. We'll talk about air-cooled stuff for a little while. But the Beetle did great all weekend, had absolutely zero issues. Mechanically, the car is pretty well sorted out at this point. We did several highway trips that were like 30 minutes, and it did flawless. So I think I'm gonna start driving this thing to work now. But we still got some more work that we're gonna do to this thing. I know we kind of blasted through a bunch of the finished work on this thing, getting it fully buffed out and everything. We still got some rust we need to address in the future. We need to do all new window rubbers in the car, and I'm gonna bring you guys right along for all of that work. So again, if there's something you wanna see a specific how-to of, put it in the comments and I'll try to get to it as we're working on this thing. But I hope you'll keep sticking around, following along with the Beetle stuff, because I'm planning on keeping this car for a pretty good while. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.